If you want to pass the BCS Foundation exam first time, you need to know exactly what you're studying for. Most people dive straight into the textbook without understanding how the exam's actually structured. The BCS Foundation covers 14 areas in total, but the thing is, they're not all weighted equally. So I'm going to break down the heavy hitters that make up the bulk of your exam. So the exam's 40 multiple choice questions. You need 65% to pass, which is 26 out of 40. So you can get 14 questions wrong and still pass. But those 40 questions aren't spread evenly across the syllabus. So let me break down the key areas and their weightings. First, you've got investigating business situations. This is 12.5% of the exam, which is about 5 questions. So it covers techniques like interviews, workshops, root cause analysis, understanding business context, and identifying who's affected. So let's say a warehouse system, for example, keeps crashing, and you need to figure out whether it's a technical issue, whether it's user training problem, or if it's a process breakdown. The key techniques here include interviews, workshops, observation, document analysis, and the tricky bits are questions that test when to use which technique, not just what they are, not just the definitions. Most people think information gathering in general equals interviewing, for example. The second area is improving business processes. This is also 12.5%, so another 5 questions. This is all about process mapping, identifying bottlenecks, techniques like swim lane diagrams, value stream mapping, and identifying waste. So mapping out why customer orders take 3 weeks when they should take 3 days. The tricky bit here is knowing which mapping technique fits which situation. Most people think, again, all process problems need the same solution. These 2 areas together give you 10 questions. So that's a quarter of your entire exam. The next 3 areas are smaller, but still important. We've got stakeholder analysis, which is 10%, about 4 questions. This covers stakeholder identification, power interest grids, managing different stakeholder types. So when the sales team wants one thing, for example, and operation wants another, you as a BA need to figure out who has the real decision-making power. The key techniques for this are power interest grids, stakeholder maps, communication planning, RACI charts. The tricky bit here is choosing between similar stakeholder tools for different situations. Next up is requirements. But the thing with this is BCS don't just give you one section on this. They split it into 3 separate sections that make up a massive 25% of the exam. So that's 10 whole questions. You've got establishing the requirements, that's 10%, documenting and modeling, which is 10%, and validating and managing, which is 5%. So establishing requirements covers requirement solicitation, workshops, and prototyping. This is about getting the right information from the right people. Documenting and modeling is all about user stories, use cases, requirements documentation, business rules, that sort of thing. Taking what you've gathered and putting it into formats people can actually use. Validating and managing covers requirements validation, as the name suggests, acceptance criteria, requirements traceability, and change control. Essentially, making sure what you've documented is actually what people need and you're tracking changes. BA competencies is next, and this is tiny at just 2.5%, so around 1 question. So this is focusing on communication skills, facilitation techniques, analytical thinking. Basically the soft skills, how you communicate with difficult stakeholders or managing stakeholders with conflicting priorities. Key techniques here are active listening, facilitation skills, most importantly, conflict resolution. One thing I will mention here is they love testing the T-shaped professional model. One tricky bit that may come up is they'll ask you to categorize whether skills like commercial awareness fall under personal qualities or business knowledge. And again, most people think knowing communication theory equals practical application. Top level high level, don't spend weeks on this section. Now, here's where most people mess up with their studying. They treat every section equally. They spend the same amount of time on BA competencies as they do on process improvement. And that's not it. Look at it this way. If you nail the two 12.5 sections, you've got 10 questions right. Add the three 10% sections, so stakeholders, establishing requirements, and documenting requirements, that's another 12 questions. So you're at 22 correct answers just from studying those 5 areas. And you only need 26 to pass. So that means you only need to scrape together 4 more marks, 4 more points from the other 9 sections of the syllabus for a passing mark. What's the better approach here? Focus 50% of your study time on those 2 heavy sections. That's investigating business situations and improving business processes. Spend 30% on stakeholder analysis and requirements, leave 20% for everything else. Most people do the opposite. They read the textbook chapter by chapter, spending equal time on each section. Then they memorize definitions instead of understanding how these concepts are applied, application. They think knowing what these words means they can answer a question about it. And that's just not correct. What I'm going to do now is go through how BCS actually tests all this. So let me show you a typical question from the heavy hitter section. After each question, feel free to pause and try and answer it yourself. I think it will be good practice. So, a company has customer complaints about slow order processing. Current process involves 5 departments, multiple handoffs. Customers wait 10 days for simple orders. Now, which technique do you think would be most appropriate to identify bottlenecks? The answer would be process mapping. You need to visualize the current state first before you can spot any bottlenecks. Let's go for another one. There's a system, it keeps crashing during peak business hours. Now, the users of the system are blaming the software. IT are blaming user error. What technique or which technique should you use first from these options? And the correct answer is observation, because you need to see what's actually happening before interviewing people about their opinions on what's happening. One more. There's a project. There are conflicting priorities between the finance director and the operations manager. Which of these tools should help you understand their relative influence? And the answer here is power interest grid, not RACI chart, which shows responsibilities. That's how they test. They're testing application, not memorization. The reality is this: if you've got limited study time, maybe you're working full time like I was, maybe you've got young children, you can't study everything equally. You need to be strategic. Focus on the heavy weighted sections first, master those techniques and how they apply to business scenarios. Then move to the medium section. Leave the light sections for last. If you want to find out which syllabus areas are gaps for you, I've got a completely free readiness quiz at bastack.com. The link is in the description. It's 10 questions covering all syllabus areas, takes about 5 minutes, and gives you a personal recommendation of what areas you should focus on when you follow up with your revision. That's it for now. See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya.